Hi, I'm Wilson Lai.
I'm Benjamin Yap.
I'm Eli Sands.
You're listening to Deep Cut, Avengers Assemble. You wrote that joke for me. It was in the script, and I had to read it. But here we go. Welcome to our Justice League episode, baby.
So usually we discuss either director's most well-known movie or a personal favorite. But today, what the hell did we get ourselves into? Tell us, Eli.
We're watching Zack Snyder's Justice League.
Yeah, boy.
And we're here to talk about it with our friend, Russell Goldman.
I was today years old when I realized that Avengers and Justice League both mean the same thing.
Oh, yeah. Russell's a writer and director of a number of short films, such as Summer of Connor and No Comment, which have screened at festivals like Holly Shorts and Frameline 43, and he has worked in collaboration with Rain. He also writes essays on movies and pays close attention to the nuts and bolts of the Hollywood blockbuster, which makes him an ideal choice to join our conversation today. You can find a link to Russell's work on his personal website in this episode's notes. Okay.
Wow. Thank you, Eli.
How we feeling?
Welcome, Russell.
Hi, Russell. Welcome.
Hey, guys. This is fun. I like this movie. I don't know what any of you think of this movie.
I had a great time.
We united the seven.
Yeah.
How do we begin?
Well, let's talk about why you wanted to talk about Justice League or Zack Snyder's Justice League, because Eli came to us saying that Russell really wants to do a Justice League episode, and I was intrigued.
That the other way around. I remember Eli saying that he wanted to do an episode.
Okay.
I think that when I saw it, and I saw it in two parts. The two nights it came out. Or night one and night two. Nightmare, which is the future sequel that Snyder will never get to make. Nightmare. I talked to Eli about what a incredible redemption arc this movie is for not just Zack Snyder. I thought a lot about when this movie would have come out in whatever form, his movie in 2017, and obviously I feel like everyone kind of knows a lot of the saga around how this film was recut, sort of taken away from him. He stepped away from it. Years later, he gets to do a more full version of it than ever could possibly have been theatrically released. Mm-hmm. And I feel like at this point in time, for this movie to come out on HBO Max reflects as pure a director's vision as I have seen in a superhero film in quite some time, and lends itself to a lot of conversation that I think is genuinely interesting that I feel like I've not heard in many circles yet. I feel like people are either like so in the tank for this and always have been, or they don't want anything to do with Snyder. And I am a convert. I did not like anything that he really made, sort of. I liked his first film, Dawn of the Dead, until this movie. And then everything that Snyder has done clicked for me with this film.
Wow, that's high praise. By the way, this episode was brought to you guys by HBO Max, so just so you guys know, we're being sponsored.
That'd be nice.
So we can't say anything bad. No, I'm just kidding. I agree with a lot of what you said, Russell. I think that this is a big win for auteurism in superhero cinema. Reading about, I guess, how Zack Snyder had to leave the original Justice League because of his daughter who committed suicide, and how Joss Whedon sort of like took control of that first film and also like now knowing the like horrible practices that he had on set. This does feel like a massive redemption arc, not just like cinematically, but also just in real life. And with these people. And I'm really glad that he was able to like finally like have his vision come to life. And I think there's just so many things just from even like the like simple like tone setting in the scenes that just where he like stamps down his like directorial mark. Like, I don't know, who else uses maybe 70% slow-mos in the whole scene? It's pretty ridiculous, but incredible at the same time. I'm glad that studios still have faith and are still willing to like put money for directors to realize their visions. Eli and Ben, what do you guys think?
I think the key here is, and the thing that I agree with,
it's
is
Lois
that
Lane.
What? The key is Lois Lane. I think what both of you touched on, which is key, is that this is an auteur's movie. I think of all the superhero movies that have come out in recent memory, this is one that doesn't feel as much made by community as something like from Marvel.
Yeah.
Like even the indie directors that they bring on who are supposedly auteurs themselves, they get chewed up by the Marvel machine. But here, this is a Zack Snyder movie. It's in the title. And so you can really feel it. I mean, with the slow-mos, but I think also in its very distinct vision of what its world is and the tone that it's taking, it's very specific. And even when you think about the way some scenes are shot, it doesn't feel like lazy filmmaking that sometimes the Marvel movies can be. Even though they're very enjoyable, they can feel like big budget TV. Yeah. This feels like big budget movie, which is cool.
I want to bookmark this idea that you raised, Ben, about it feeling like it is more crafted by an individual than other superhero movies. I think one of the pieces of context that we should be talking about is how Snyder benefits from the change in DC's approach from 2017, the initial release of Justice League, to their approach in 2020 to 2021, when they've decided to do the opposite of what Marvel's doing, and instead of have a coherent approach, give individual license to different directors to take the same characters, sometimes the same actors and the same roles, and make it more individual. Now, for my opinion, I frankly feel a little ambivalent and a little bit nebulous. I definitely appreciate the singularity of it, and it is absolutely distinct and of Zack Snyder's vision. I think there's a lot that I can appreciate about it and also acknowledge that it's not exactly my taste.
Just like seeing Eli in his face, just like searching for something good to say about this movie.
Just say you hate it.
I don't hate it though, because there are. Look, I think one of the things I struggle with superheroes in general is the exceptional person take to superheroes, and I frankly had trouble nailing down if Zack Snyder looks at superheroes critically or adoringly. I think I've heard a lot about him being either libertarian or Ayn Randian, where he upholds the idea of the exceptional person who has to have their way. And then I've also heard that he is critical of superheroes and wants to present them as messed up as possible. And I see both. I see glorification and I see criticism, and it's hard to parse out meaning from it, I think. And then on the other hand, there are ways that he takes in this movie the heroes that are huge and makes them small. I think in particular, Ray Fisher as Victor Stone and Ezra Miller as Barry Allen, Cyborg, and The Flash, respectively, are both good at taking these uber mensches and bringing them down to more of a human level, at least.
But I think that's more in the character construction, right? Because there's so much weight to a Batman, to a Superman, to a Wonder Woman, versus like Cyborg and the Flash are young heroes. They're like supposed to bring the levity and like bring them down to earth.
I feel like this is an unpopular opinion, but I found both of those characters highly insufferable. And I was reading past reviews of the original Justice League cut, the theatrical cut, people saying that the Flash was the bright spot. And I was like, not really. He was really annoying.
Ben, he generates lightning. He's literally the bright spot.
Can I ask, have any of you actually
Show of
seen...
hands, who has watched it? Who has... Yeah.
I have not seen it.
I've seen it.
I have seen it.
Okay, so maybe it's not a coincidence that Wilson and I are higher on this film than Ben and Eli. We've also seen the Whedon cut, and you guys have not.
I have not.
Okay. No, I don't. I think that a lot of the praise of this cut has been in contrast to the Whedon version.
Yes.
Yeah.
Obviously, that was a very compromised film. There are singular scenes where you can see just like the state of Ben Affleck in his life, and how there are certain shots of Batman within the same scene where Ben Affleck looks like a completely different person. And also the lighting is different. And also it is the most obvious. You can tell who was behind what in that movie, and how there was really, no vision that Whedon was bringing to what was a studio mandated 2-hour version of what is such an expansive story.
Yeah.
The thing that I really like about this movie, thinking of it on its own terms, and again, I do not know how he or anyone at Warner Brothers expected to bring a version of this movie to theaters in the first place in Snyder's truer form, is that it sort of feels like one of those like roadshow movies from the 60s. It feels like 10 Commandments. It feels like these like insane, like you're just kind of looking at gods movies. That's how I think Snyder, for the most part, thinks of these characters. I think he thinks of it in the same terms of like Sophocles.
Yeah.
Where it is these like their fallibilities are as big as their strengths. They are not the kind of ground level characters that you see in Marvel. And that's, of course, the big difference between how those two companies approach things. You get a little bit of that with Barry Allen and Victor, of like more ground level relatable characters. And that might be the praise for those characters might be due to that. But I think there is something to praise, and there is something that I understand a lot more about Superman in this film as a symbol than has been treated in Man of Steel or Batman v Superman, where you could describe Snyder's opinion of Superman as a not particularly great, as like
but is it though? Because that's what I can't pin down. Because I really like when you say that we're looking at gods, I go back and forth on whether or not Snyder is looking at the gods in awe or disdain.
I think really it's both. It can be both, right?
I think it's both. Yeah.
Because I feel like Zack Snyder's filmmaking operates on extremes, right? Like, so whatever emotion he chooses, he just goes 100% in that direction in trying to portray that emotion. It's highly melodramatic filmmaking. And also like highly effective in a Hollywood blockbuster, because what you want as an audience member, like ideally sitting in a theater, is that maximum impact. And that's what Zack Snyder is trying to do, and I feel like is able to swing between like these opposite views of superheroes, and I don't know, successfully able to portray that to the audience.
I think there's an argument for the way that you're framing it, Wilson, as like, actually, maybe that's more of a responsible take to really swing very far towards positive and very far towards negative alternatingly.
Yeah.
I mean, I like this approach of them being treated as gods almost. And I think that's why I find the trying to humanize Cyborg and Flash stuff really annoying. I think the Flash, especially for me, in his like trying to be funny kind of stuff, really pushes the grimdark tone away from itself, which I wish it didn't. I want it to be, if you're gonna go 4 hours of grimdark, just do 4 hours. Don't give me 5 minutes of not funny humor. So that's kind of like I wish this just went full on, like, it's great, it's dark, everything sucks. These people are scary, but they're trying to save the world as well. But
I will say though that the Cyborg stuff does do, I think it's a slightly more human tone, but it is as like brooding and dramatic and like as the stuff with Wonder Woman and whatever.
I think that story with Cyborg, that backstory, and the through line that used Cyborg, because the movie is actually too short, we didn't have enough time to set it up in a convincing way that it became this like very quick. This guy hates his dad. He hates being a cyborg. Like 1 minute, and you gotta just believe that and get behind it. And I couldn't. And I kind of wish the movie was half an hour longer so I could get behind that.
Yeah, add another chapter to that.
Yeah,
shit.
I think we needed that. Because now it's a bit too quick.
Just add 3 more epilogues.
We'll get to that.
We needed 3 prologues.
And to your point of wanting it to be grim all the time, like, I guess my view is like a superhero team up movie like brings together all the different genres of these like separate superhero films, right? What you want to do is ideally strike a balance, which is easy because for the Marvel side, because Avengers, everyone has been like sort of forced into the same tonal mold, where it's high stakes but still lighthearted for the most part with the characters, and they're able to have banter all the time. Whereas what I enjoy about Justice League is how far apart tonally these characters are and how Zack Snyder manages to juggle that together. And like you like see it in the comics. It's a similar thing. But I'm glad that they chose to emotionally root the film with Cyborg and sort of with Barry Allen, because they're the two people or the two members of the Justice League that haven't had their own feature films. So this is sort of like their showcase, which is pretty great.
I think partially that's the problem. Like if they were introduced on their own terms, on their own movies, maybe that would have helped, I guess, this work without having to do all that setup within this one. Then it would just be they meet up and then they're trying to figure out the problem together. But then this one has to introduce 2 new characters, give them enough stakes, and then finally save the world. So like it's like a lot to do even within 4 hours.
It introduces Aquaman as well.
Oh yeah.
No, Aquaman had his
Aquaman, James Wan's film has not happened yet.
James Wan's film is so fun, guys. It's like
amazing.
Really good.
I like it so much. It's my favorite of the DCEU.
Yeah. Wait, including this?
I think that Aquaman, I put a notch. I like James Wan a lot. I think that he's kind of in that like singular Snyder mode. I think his stuff is a little more palatable towards maybe newcomers. But that's the stuff I really like about DC that's in Aquaman and in this, where it's like really kind of gonzo, cosmic, very self-serious, but in a fun way. Like it loves its own exposition. It's not embarrassed by it the way that a Downey Jr. would like mock it in a Marvel movie kind of way. It loves that shit. It's differently toned for sure, but I think that Aquaman's my favorite.
Aquaman's the best character in this. Prove me wrong.
He's so great.
Those scenes in the first part actually, and they have like low key the lighthouse energy. Like honestly, and I think this characterization of Aquaman as a drunk who doesn't give a shit, awesome. Like really dope.
Ben, have you seen his movie? You should watch it. It's really fun.
And I still don't really care enough to, but
no, there's a scene where they like, I don't know, they airdrop into a Sahara desert. It's like incredible. Like, what's the song that's playing? I forgot, but it's incredible.
It's a remix of Africa by Toto.
Oh yeah, it is. It is a remix of Africa.
I get it.
Yeah, that's what's to expect.
We should talk about music. It's very on the nose.
Wait, no, I don't know what you're talking about. Every time that Wonder Woman shows up, I thought that she got a proper understated entrance that was not repetitive in any way. No, not even that. The whatever the
oh yeah,
it almost sounds like the beginning of Immigrant Song, where I guess it's supposed to be Themyscirian or whatever.
Yes, I don't know. I really love the Wonder Woman theme. That was like one of my favorite parts about her solo movie was the theme that they gave her. And I think it worked every time because I'm just like, yeah, fuck. Like Wonder Woman's gonna fuck shit up now. Like let's just watch her do that. But like, yes, there's no denying that it is very heavy-handed in the use of its music. But like this just goes back to what I was saying about how Zack Snyder tries to go for maximum impact all the time.
I think it works. I mean, like, even though, like, as a whole, I don't like the movie, but like, I think it works. It makes sense.
I'm gonna say, off of your point, Ben, of that you wanted these other characters all introduced beforehand. I think that and I noticed this when I was revisiting some scenes the other day. The 4-hour version of this film, which is the version that we have, was maybe not intended for theaters, but is the version that we currently have. There is something that I really do appreciate about how the first hour of it is, we don't meet Flash or Cyborg yet. You're setting up a lot of Superman has died stuff, a lot of the more brooding stuff of the mascara getting wrecked by Steppenwolf, who we'll get into. He's a good guy.
Oh, we will.
Oh, yeah.
Thick.
And then when you really feel the apocalyptic stakes and you understand, like, the fate of every galaxy is at play, that's when you are introduced to Cyborg. And that is when you're introduced to the Flash as these key components of characters that, like, for plot reasons are very important towards saving the fate of the world, but pointing towards optimism. And that is the thing that I really like about this movie that is not present in the other Zack Snyder superhero films, that I think he himself is discovering, that between those characters and using Superman as the resurrection of him, that is, as this source of optimism, as a source of, like, hope for the future, you're finding hope and you're finding faith in this very extreme Snyder world. And that tonal balance, I was shocked how much that worked for me.
I'm thinking now about how Flash is introduced, and I wrote notes on this.
It's a great scene.
It's a funny scene, but then I realized, like, immediately as I was watching, I was like, the first time we meet Flash, his first villain is a burger. When you really think about it, it's a burger.
Yeah,
not wrong.
And that whole scene set up really weird, like with him making eyes at this lady outside. And I was just like, what? I get where it's going, but it shows its hands so quickly and that it's not really interesting. And then she's gonna die, and then he does his whole thing. But yeah, anyway, it was a weird scene for me.
I think, Ben, I respond to a similar kind of thing that I tracked across the movie. And I don't necessarily say this as a problem, though I think in other movies it could be. There is a lot of inorganic moving of characters. I found myself asking a lot, why is this character doing this now? I think a small example of this is that when Batman, Wonder Woman, Cyborg, Flash, and Aquaman are talking about the box and the possibility of using it to bring Superman back, they're all explaining the rules that they have suddenly understood together, and they're finishing each other's sentences going around in a circle. There is some arm twisting of the characters to meet certain beats in ways that took me out of it. And on a related note, I do have a concern that Nerdwriter brings up in a video about the 2017 Justice League, which is that the characters do have powers that overlap, and they fight in similar ways, with some exceptions.
Batman doesn't have anything to do in the finale.
Yeah, he can't do anything. Like, he can just shoot his guns.
Shoot some stuff.
They all have super speed. They all punch real hard.
No, Barry has extra super speed that the other characters don't.
Yeah, but Wonder Woman is basically the Flash as well. It's crazy. Like, in that first scene, you see her saving those people from bullets.
Yeah.
And then I was thinking, whoa, she's fast. So what the hell does the Flash bring to the table? Which I guess they do answer that question, like, what does he bring to the table?
Judaism, baby.
There's one space where Aquaman is very successful. I'm not sure if you guys noticed the water.
Okay, that
This
part
is
where
the
he comes
water.
to save them from the underground thing, that felt very contrived. Like, this is how Aquaman comes in. He realized, like,
how else do you want Aquaman to come in?
he suddenly gets flushed into the scene, and you're like, oh, okay, he's here now, and he's gonna join up. He wasn't really fighting Steppy over there. He just came at the end of the fight.
That was he was refusing the call. Hero's journey shit. He was refusing the call until that moment. Very triumphant decision to start fighting with them.
What I'm trying to, like, put my finger on is that I reacted a lot of the time with a sort of feeling of, okay, I guess this is happening now. And being able to submit and go along with that, I think, is part of the experience. And it can be fun. I think it's hard for me to turn off the part of my brain that's like, but I'm not citing it necessarily as a problem.
Have you seen have you seen the Marvel superhero movies, Eli?
I've seen a handful, and also it's one of those things where I've like seen so many clips of them on YouTube because the scenes are written well. There's good dialogue and there is good causal linkage and making sure that we understand why characters are doing what they're doing at any beat.
In the Marvel movies, you mean?
I'm sure I could point to examples otherwise, but I think on the whole, Marvel is pretty good with its plot event linkage.
Yes.
I think that part of that, though, has to do with how they see their characters versus how Snyder sees these characters.
Ooh, go on.
There is something about if you're going to basically treat them as gods, part of me is starting to see your screenplay as scripture. Not that I'm saying that Chris Terrio is the new gospel truth. But in the way of like, I am much more willing to say, well, that's just what happens, as opposed to the ending of Falcon and the Winter Soldier or the end of WandaVision, which it's very interesting that they're starting that journey into expanded storytelling at the same time we get this 4-hour DC movie.
Yeah.
But where those shows end on, they are trying to service all these characters in a much more grounded way. And I think that the writing of those two shows respectively falls flat on their faces. Marvel's had more success elsewhere.
Agree on that point.
I am much more willing for Zack Snyder's Justice League to go where he is going because his direction is absolutely stronger than the script is. Like, and I say this as someone who likes the film, like, no question. I am willing to go where he is willing to take us because I think that many of the pieces are very interesting, and I think that the whole is something that I was not expecting to appreciate as much. It is hard to not look at this film, which, as many superhero stories are, a lot of parent stuff, a lot of kid stuff, a lot of kids who want to make their parents proud or their familial figure proud. The case of Steppenwolf and Darkseid, and not think of the personal tragedy that Snyder suffered while he was making the original version of this film.
Yeah,
where his daughter committed suicide. And you do get, as someone who has seen all of his films and always thought of him as an interesting visual stylist, but had very aggressive themes and politics and storytelling things that he fell back on, to see something that did feel like it was speaking to that emotion of wanting to please someone who's close to you, that we see multiplied many times fold because there are so many characters and narratives in this massive film. Again, it is giving points to someone that I just haven't seen this work from before, and that's what is exciting me so much. But it does, I think, genuinely work for a movie that is about pointing towards optimism and pointing towards what is possible and what is good.
Yeah. At so many points when I was watching this cut of Justice League, I kept on thinking, like, this is so much like a labor of love and also like a labor of grief for him. And you really see it in some scenes, especially like the early Lois Lane stuff before Superman comes back. And it, like, I don't know, it feels very heavy. And I'm just glad he was able to use this outlet for him.
Going back to what you were saying, Eli, I mean, your issues are issues with writing, right?
Yes.
And with story, and so that really comes down to the script. And I think my issue is the problem of motivation with most of the characters. And the thing that I keep thinking about is this one part where Batman goes, there's like 3 or 4 of us now, but we need one more. And I'm like, why one? Why not 5? Or like, why is your Justice League 6 people specifically? Because he keeps talking about how he knows all these other meta-humans. So why just these 6? And the reason, of course, is because these exact combination of people solves the problem of Steppenwolf, solves the problem of the mother boxes. But it doesn't really explain itself that way. I feel like if you had kind of established why we ended up with the Justice League, and I feel like it had to have that kind of, it just happened to be this group of people, and that's why we just happen to be them, I think that's fine. But I think Batman was so specific. He's like, I need this guy because he has space. I need this guy, and I need this woman. And I was like, yeah, it feels a bit contrived. And I think if it had maybe set itself up as like, this just happens to be heroes I have, and this is the tool set we have, we're gonna lose, but then actually we have what we need. If it had set himself up that way, it would have been way more interesting. But it was very much like Batman knew exactly what the tools he needed was even before he went in.
Right.
Like, I needed the Flash because he can turn back time. I needed Cyborg because he's got the box. So this kind of thing where characters say and do things because they needed to, for the plot is the thing that really rubs me the wrong way, which is why I kind of prefer the first hour of the film, because that's when the plot doesn't matter as much. It's really just like mood and stuff.
Yeah.
And I think that stuff is more successful.
Definitely.
I agree that the first half of this movie is probably more successful than the second, which you're building towards a pretty familiar finale as far as what we have seen in other superhero films. I do think the specifics of how that finale is accomplished and the way simply that Snyder can wield all the visual effects and all the CGI together into a coherent vision, I think is something to celebrate in this movie, especially compared to 90% of the crap that we get from Marvel. But I fundamentally, as like when you're pointing towards why 6, and in my mind goes like, well, the Bible's kind of contrived as well. and thinking of these, he is treating the original Justice League comics the same way that you would in a Bible adaptation, where there's not much questioning of why this was here in the first place. It is designed to celebrate what was good about it in the first place. That is not really a defense of it. That is more how I in my brain was willing to write certain things off.
I feel like I was willing to forgive a lot of, I guess, dialogue and plot stuff because I was just wanted the movie to take me. But also because I watched the original Justice League and like I understand, I guess it's similar plot machinations, but seeing it done with a little more heart and a little more care to like let scenes breathe a little bit longer just makes the most difference. I was thinking about how in so many Marvel movies, every scene sort of like in the Avengers films, like every scene sort of like ends in a cliffhanger where they like one of the characters like says like, oh, we need another superhuman, and it like cuts to the next scene. Whereas in this Justice League movie, they really like just talk things out and come to like a logical conclusion at the end of a scene. However like stupid the dialogue may be, the scenes actually have endings instead of like lead-ins to next scenes, which I thought was like a really great difference between the two. Yeah, it's hard not to compare the Avengers and the Justice League because
I think the thing I do not like about this film, and we could get into, is what he tries to do in the last 30 minutes. There's a very clear endpoint for this story where you get the sense that, yes, this group of characters, there will be more things to solve in the universe. Like you get a sense of there are ongoing apocalypses happening, but we solved this one, and this one, he makes it, to all his credit, he makes what Steppenwolf and Darkseid are trying to do in this feel really fucking big. And the end where you have to turn back time just to stop this from happening, he makes that feel really fucking big. And then the last 30 minutes sort of feel, I can't remember which critic point used this phrase, but the last 30 minutes of the movie are basically like, here's all the stuff that I was going to do in the sequels. Interested? Question mark. And to me, I was like, that's where it feels a lot more like I'm watching a season of something, or like a miniseries, or I'm watching a 30 minutes of Marvel credit stingers, as opposed to the ending of a movie. Even if I am interested in seeing what he might have done or what he could possibly do one day, does not really work cinematically for me in any real way.
If it was like a 5-minute teaser, I think it'd been fine, but it was so long.
Yeah.
It was so long.
Well, I was like, he's doing it because he's like, I fucking can do this. That's why I'm doing this.
Yeah, that's why he did it.
And also, I don't know if I'm right, but I heard that they're sort of disbanding the DCEU.
Yeah.
I don't think there would be another chance for Zack Snyder to tap into these specific characters and these actors playing these characters anymore after this.
They're done with him from everything that we understand. That this was when they greenlit the Snyder cut, quote unquote, they were like, oh, we can just like put that like 4-hour cut you have on your computer and we can just put it on HBO Max. A lot of people will watch it. And he was like, no, you're going to give me $70 million to actually finish all the VFX that were unfinished from my cut. And I want the chance to add some bullshit at the end. Because from what I understand, the only 2 scenes that were actually shot for this version were the Jared Leto extended sequence that takes place in quote unquote Nightmare, which is a future reality where Superman has, I guess, turned evil, or Dark Side 1, something like that. That's a vision, of course, Bruce Wayne has. And then the ending, which was originally going to be Batman speaking to Green Lantern. And that was the one thing that Warner Brothers had said, no, you can't do that. We have our own plans for Green Lantern. So he reshot it with Martian Manhunter.
Green Lantern.
Which does explain a baffling choice that is left in the middle of the movie.
Oh, yeah. That is
very heartfelt
so
scene
weird.
with Diane Lane and Amy Adams ends with the reveal that Diane Lane, who plays Martha Kent, is in fact Martian Manhunter.
Why?
I do not know.
Martian
So
Manhunter knew Lewis was
confusing.
the key. He just knew. I was gonna say something, but I forgot.
I killed the buzz.
Oh no! Last night I was just looking at the Wikipedia page for the DCEU. I was just kind of interested where this was going, and there's such a long list of reworked / cancelled projects. And I was also looking at the slate of movies coming out, and it definitely feels much more fragmented compared to the Marvel Cinematic Universe, which is essentially a long TV show. Whereas the DC universe has kind of just gone to this point where they're like, they don't think they're going to be able to do this right or in the way that Marvel is doing it. So now I think they're not caring. I think they're just going to make one-shot movies that are going to work. So they know that Wonder Woman is going to make money. They know Shazam's going to make money. So they're just making those movies, which I think is a valid studio strategy as well. I
find that exciting.
Yeah, if you can't play them at their game, like find another game to play.
Right.
What's the
That's also
what's the term?
less of a commitment, because I think they don't have the person to kind of tie this together. So they're not going to. They're just gonna commit to a single movies making money, which is fine.
And I think the Marvel Cinematic Universe is hitting a point where it's becoming so oversaturated that they really need like a massive like wipeout event to happen. But it's not going to happen because people like care about these characters so much.
Didn't we just get a wipeout event? At the
it
end
was
of
a fake
Infinity
out
War?
wipeout event.
Well, it's funny because the TV shows, and I won't speak about it because that's not why we're here. You get the sense that all of the Marvel stuff now is reveling from the events of the quote unquote snap.
Yes.
But I think that Snyder obviously was even if he wasn't making all the films, he was the tonal link of the DCEU to a point, really until the point where they decided that he wasn't working for Justice League and they parted ways. I think that would have been really hard to stomach for every single character to be worked into that very specific tone that I think Snyder himself was still trying to figure out what he was trying to say with these characters in the first place. You look at stuff like Suicide Squad, where they are on one hand trying to like ape the Marvel Guardians of the Galaxy thing, and they're trying to create something as like gritty as Batman v Superman, and it's just like the right mix of like grisly and fucking stupid and like not confident. And the thing about Snyder is that he's incredibly confident, and that does matter when you're watching a movie, that this guy fully believes what he's saying. And when you watch something like Suicide Squad, or even the parts of stuff like I actually quite like the Patty Jenkins Wonder Woman, which I think was them stepping away from this. But when you are like, when you see someone try to do the Snyder thing and they don't have it in their bones, you can really tell it's a certain kind of energy, and that it will rarely be seen, because the Marvel thing, even if you get someone like James Gunn or Ryan Coogler who can go off in their own directions and do something that might be really interesting, it all kind of has to come back to one producing figure. And I guess DC has decided to step away from that, which all power to them. Those movies are also good.
Well, that's why I'm really excited to see Gunn's Suicide Squad. So just to see how far he himself feels like he can stretch to, like, I don't know, outstretch the molds of the Marvel Cinematic Universe with.
Yeah, because Gunn is an auteur, and with Marvel, even he gets a bit shackled by the machine, right?
Even though Guardians does feel like the most auteuristic work out of all of the Marvel movies. I think it has a very specific attitude and tone that a lot of other Marvel movies just is incredibly lacking. And I think, when he's given free reign, I think it's going to be very fun.
Okay, should we talk about Steppenwolf? I'm looking at him right now. Just so you know, I'm just playing this 4-hour movie silently as we're doing this podcast. So I'm just looking at Steppenwolf talking to the Sa right now.
First thing I gotta say about Steppenwolf, he looks fucking good. He looks really cool, especially if you watch the Whedon version where he has like a kind of, Wilson, correct me, like he has like facial hair in that. He looks way more human, thus way more gross. In this one, his suit is kind of like wavy.
Yeah, I love his suit in this one. He looks so much better.
I mean, I didn't see the first one, the original one, but I kind of hated the way he looked, but that's kind of me. I don't like this stuff. Okay, maybe it makes sense then, but I don't like seeing all these things moving. It's a little gross, but maybe that's the point.
I think it's just such an interesting, and once again, fully committed visual choice that it never steps away from, especially like all the Steppenwolf Darkseid stuff. I believe that Thanos was originally ripped off of Darkseid and Steppenwolf, like when Marvel was doing Thanos in the comics in the first place. And a lot of their goals, of course, are very similar. I don't think that Steppenwolf as a character is necessarily fully cooked, but I think he is very empathetic in this version because, as a reference point, Darkseid, not in the Whedon cut at all.
No, not at all.
So Steppenwolf, you do not really understand in any emotional way what he is trying to do. This Steppenwolf, just by trying to be like the middle manager guy who's pleasing his uncle, is kind of fun. Especially in the moment later in the movie.
Too,
yeah, when he takes off the big horny helmet, and you just like see him like as like a pouty child. I like that stuff a lot.
In my notes, I referred to him with a combination of so many Yiddish words. There's Schleppenwolf, Stuppenwolf, Kvetchenwolf. He's great. What's not to like?
He's my chunky, wrinkly boy. I like him a lot.
Chunky, wrinkly boy.
Oh. It does feel like they were taking a cue from Avengers of like using Thanos as the kind of core of the movie, because Steppenwolf's need to please Darkseid. It's kind of dumb, but it works to make sense of him as a character. And to also, I guess, in the Snyder Cut, make it feel like there is a bigger bad somewhere. Right? Because with Thanos, it doesn't feel like there's bigger to go, but here it's like he's just the middle manager and you're not cut out for it, so there's gonna be more shit coming. I'm looking now at the big flashback about Darkseid's first invasion, which I understand from the original cut, the theatrical cut, was actually Steppenwolf for some reason coming in, which makes no sense in the context of this version. I really disliked this exposition scene because, as cool as it is, I think, to see gods and like the Amazons and stuff, it's cool. But when Wonder Woman goes into that weird temple thing and she sees those images on the walls, I like that scene a lot. And I was like, wow, is Snyder going to do exposition completely wordlessly? Is he going to do it? Is he just going to be like, we need 3 boxes, put them together? I was like, is he doing it? Nope. Here's 20 minutes of the exact same thing, but with all the action. I was like, okay.
That's the Lord of the Rings scene you're talking about, where it's like Zeus. Yeah. It's literally Zeus. Yes, also like the Lantern Corps. And that's the stuff I do like, regardless of how successful it is as a piece of writing or whatever. That's the stuff I like about DC. It goes full. And there's a quote I think about on the Marvel side when they were making Infinity War. And originally his goal is to court death. That's the character's original goal. Like death is like manifested in his love interest. Mm-hmm. And then Marcus and McFeely were interviewed. They were asked why they did not do that. They reframe his whole emotional core to be about his daughter Gamora, who's a character we already know. And Marcus and McFeely say, we thought about doing the death stuff, and at the end of the day, we try to work it out, and we just thought it would be too crazy. And if you're making Infinity War and you're deciding, well, that's just too crazy, you're really holding something back. That's supposed to be the culmination of everything. I do appreciate, and I see this in Aquaman as well, and in parts of a film that I don't think really works, but is interesting, Wonder Woman 1984, where you get the sense that they thought of the craziest thing that they could do, and they did it. And that's, again, quality by point of comparison, not necessarily quality by itself. There is something to really appreciate there.
I think that there's a strong argument to make that Marvel, which is ostensibly more jocular, takes itself more seriously than the DC movies do. I also admire the gall and willingness to go as far as possible and as big as possible in this movie, Justice League. Yeah, those parts of it are fun, and
I think that's a very interesting way of putting it.
Eli just made a face that was like, I don't know, it was like a shrug. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, look, I'm as we're talking, I'm really trying to like pin down my thoughts here. I think there's a certain amount of, if you want to go with it, you will enjoy it. I never much like being told go with it in movies. So there's a clash there. But I do still admire and respect and at times enjoy how honest Justice League is with itself, its conviction, and its consistency. So there are things that I do admire about it, even though I don't always personally click with it.
But I feel like you hit the nail on the head, Eli, that it is actually trying to have fun no matter how self-serious it is. It is actually having more fun than the Marvel movies. Because it doesn't care about having to necessarily tell a coherent story. It's just like, what's cool now? Let's do the cool thing.
Yeah, like, what do I want to do?
It's like a kid playing with action figures. That's what this is.
Exactly.
That's the Snyder cut, That's the Snyder flavor there. He's just a kid with action figures, and he's like, yeah, what's the cool thing now? I pull into my box. Hey, look, it's Zeus. Let's throw him with Batman. That's that kind of feeling you get.
And it has its own, like, it does let's just think of the craziest thing we can do. And then it sticks to its convictions in a storytelling way. Maybe not in like a scene to scene way, but like big scale. Again, comparison to Marvel, Stan Lee's, his quote about the illusion of change that they were trying to create in the comics. Nothing actually changes in the Marvel universe, cinematic or otherwise. There is something nice about if Snyder's like, okay, I'm going to kill off Superman at the end of Batman v Superman. At the beginning of Justice League, that is going to have biblical ramifications. The entire universe is going to hear Superman's cry as he is slain. And that it's cool. I don't know what else to say about it. I think it had just been so long since I had seen something that huge and genuine that I was like, I like this. This is different.
What did you think about the post-snap stuff in Endgame?
I think that is very successful in a similar way. It did take 20 movies to get there.
Yes, that's true.
Where you can see, okay, the consequences of what have happened do feel like they have ramifications. And I think Marcus and Feely, overall smart screenwriters, they figured out where to put those characters in ways that made emotional sense for their journeys, but also was interesting as the first hour of another very long movie.
Yeah,
I think that you get in some of the Guardians movies. I recently rewatched the second one, which is maybe it's between that and Iron Man 3 of my favorite of
your favorite
of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Again, the most singular and idiosyncratic movies that really don't have any connective tissue to the other films, where they have to service some story function and end in a certain place. You get the sense of, certainly in the second Guardians, we are willing to go grand scale and at the same time like make this about fathers and sons. Make this about like very not new or nuanced ideas, but just very core familial stories that again feel as old as time. And this is, I think that he reflects something similar to that.
Right.
And Batman v Superman, even the longer version of that movie, which I did go back and see after I saw this film, is maybe coherent as a piece of like, oh, okay, maybe I now understand everything that happened, but is so dour and violent and busy and doesn't really seem to have any point of view on anything, that I do not know why that film was made except to service what was then accomplished in this movie and just set up all the pieces.
Yeah, these heroes straight up murder people.
Yeah, they do.
Like, Batman just uses guns all the time, and it's very confusing knowing his kind of characterization, right? That he's supposedly not trying to kill people, but he's making guns. It's weird. Like, why does he have a tank? All these questions that I can't explain. Whereas, like, if you like play Batman games and stuff, like they always help you understand that he's not killing people. Like, if you play those Batman
permanent
Arkham
injury,
games,
but
Yeah.
So, but that at least there's a line. You know, there's a line.
Yeah, but also like
he'll paralyze a guy, but kill.
But like movie characterization is different from like comic book and video game characterization. Like I think this Batman is a lot darker and would kill people for things, as evidenced by BVS and I guess
at the end of this, he's gonna kill the Joker.
The Nolan Batmans commit to that no kill rule.
Yeah.
Sometimes in like insane ways. Where like, you know, maybe kill Joker at the end of Dark Knight after everything that's happened.
Yeah,
that's
maybe
just
maybe, yeah.
But I think those characterizations are like from the comics are what kind of give them interesting wrinkles that help the story shape itself into a way that's a little different from other characters. Because if your heroes are always the same, right? They're just gonna kill the bad guy, then it doesn't give them something to fight against. Like whether it's within themselves. Like you look at like Batman not killing Joker ever. It's senseless when you think about it. Like, why not kill the guy that's giving you the biggest problems? Why not? But it does make it like interesting at least to have this relationship and like making it difficult for Batman to get to that point and feeling like he needs to break his one rule or whatever. So with Zack Snyder breaking all the rules,
Batman doesn't really make a lot of sense.
That's part of why I love in the nightmare sequence. Like it's so funny to me when Jared Leto's Joker's like, "You're a little twerp, aren't you, Batman? You're a little twerp," and Batman's like, "Okay, Joker, watch out. Stop! Don't make fun of me, please. Please stop." Just this Batman would kill him, I think.
I do just need to say for reference, as someone who sees everything and unfortunately saw the first time Jared Leto was in this universe. He's giving a completely different performance in this movie, like visually totally different. I think he liked the Joaquin Phoenix Joker look and he was just like, put that on me. And I unfortunately have to say, he is better in this than he is in the Suicide Squad movie.
Oh, definitely.
And he is not good in this.
I kind of scrubbed that from my mind.
Suicide Squad
I don't remember.
Is borderline unwatchable. It is actually unwatchable.
Across his forehead in this one.
It's just covered up. It's still there. If you look hard enough, it's still there.
It's there.
He's undergoing laser surgery. He's mid-removal, okay? Give him a break. Russell, I'm thinking about what you said a little bit ago about the emotions writ large, particularly around Superman's death. And I'm thinking about who receives specifically the scream. And it is all the heroes that we're going to meet. And that just makes me think about how Snyder looks at every people and the normal everyday characters who surround our heroes. I want to toss out an observation that I'm a little nervous to present, but I can't really shake it. All of the main significant, exceptional characters, whether they're superheroes or they're family and love interests, are attractive Hollywood-looking people. And I think that Snyder shoots the every people in ways that seem grotesque and ugly.
You think
the non-superheroes?
You think he's trying to shoot Amy Adams ugly in this movie?
No. I'm including her in that's the family and love interest thing, but I think like the owner of the pet shop, the barista who's serving Wonder Woman, the guy driving the truck. It just got me thinking about like how, if we're looking at this snap in the Marvel universe, I think that goes out of its way to show how, for example, the other students in Spider-Man's school responded to the snap, right? And like there's this age disparity. Some of them have aged more, some of them have not. Like that affects them in their day-to-day. I'm just thinking about how much do we actually see the world, like people responding to the death of Superman? We see the big black flag over the London Bridge. Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah, no, it's not his focus. I don't know if I could get the same like opinion of lesser people the same way that you could in you could maybe even read into like in the Brad Bird superhero movies. where the villains are normal people who want to be super.
Yeah, there's its own problem, right?
Yeah, well, I think it's a trope that you fall back on a lot of in these movies of like, you must depower the superhero, or you must be as powerful as the superhero, despite the fact that you have not been gifted this the same way.
Right.
I think a counter within Justice League, within the main six, is you can find in Cyborg, who is like, I am a freakish monster, in my opinion. This only happened because I was in a horrific accident in which my mom died. And then my father has all these, Joe Morton with his insane robots again, has all these crazy ideas about what I can or should be. And it's not even that he's refusing the call. He's just like, I want a normal life. And the emotional catharsis at the end is that he can have a life with other people. It's the line of like, I'm not broken and I'm not alone, which it really does remind me of still my favorite superhero film ever, Sam Raimi's Spider-Man 2.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Where you really get a strong balance of how can I be super and be a normal person? And both feel so equally served in that movie. And I think just within the context of, there's a lot more going on in this movie. It's a lot more heightened, but just within the context of Cyborg's arc, I do think you get a taste of that.
Yeah.
I was going to ask if you guys have, just based off of the premise of your show, do you have any relationship with Snyder's other work? Is there any that you've been particularly repelled by, or particularly like, oh, that's actually where I wish he kind of went with his filmmaking?
You know, I think he's one of those filmmakers who it's hard not to have an opinion about, even if you haven't seen a ton of his stuff. I saw 300 on TV when I was pretty young, and I remember hearing from maybe classmates later on that it was a metaphor for America's conflicts in the Middle East that is racially cast in a troubling way, right? And I remember feeling repelled by that, and then being able to quickly look at his subsequent things like Sucker Punch and point out problems on the poster, or as I've said, like, look at how he maybe glorifies these super figures. And that's never enough, right? Like, you got to do the watching. So I think watching both Justice League and the reaction to Justice League, Snyder's Cut, is a reminder to me to not draw the conclusions beforehand, and try to find both value and critical reaction. It's hard when there are a number of things about Justice League that just don't vibe with me, but this conversation helps me put my finger on more that I appreciate about it.
If this was certainly the tone of every DC movie, I think that would be really hard to stomach for many reasons. But it being one menu item at the DCEU restaurant, I think sits better for me. But
yeah,
I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm interested in that world where every single DC movie is like this, and in fact, more of this. Even like I am fascinated by the idea.
It was a lot of fun. It was
okay.
really good.
See, Birds of Prey I didn't like because I felt like it was trying to be this thing that was more Marvel-esque, but kind of splitting the difference in a way that I didn't find entirely successful. You know what I mean? And like the action, that one was also for me a little weak.
Yeah, you really could. Yeah, the difference in the action sequences is like night and day.
I was gonna say, with Zack Snyder, I feel like the only film of his that I might have seen in the theater might have been Watchmen, which is weird when you think about it. Yeah.
What do you think? What do you guys think his deep cut is? I guess it could be Watchmen.
You that question, Russell.
Yeah, because you've seen everything. I've only seen the DC Snyder movies.
And the Snyder stand, and this is the first Snyder film I've actually liked. I mean, he has a new movie coming out. What, in like a week? Army of the Dead.
Oh yeah.
Oh.
I'm interested in that.
Cinematographer? What?
Army of the Canceled.
Look at him, 2 movies in a year.
Wow, watch both of them be in my top 10. No, that's not
yeah.
There'll be a bunch of good movies.
So what's your deep cut? What would your deep cut be?
I mean, Dawn of the Dead, I think by default, it's the only film of his that he did not write or feels written by Snyder. That's a James Gunn script. I think that mesh, you can see Gunn sort of go in that direction of like Gunn sort of becoming a visual stylist like Snyder, while having a very specific worldview that I find very entertaining, grounded and elevated at the same time. That makes me very excited for Army of the Dead, because I think that is his only other movie that I would point to in his filmography. So that feels successful, as opposed to there might be interesting beats in them. I think there's interesting stuff in 300 and Watchmen. I've not actually seen Sucker Punch. And Legend of the Guardians, the Owls of Ga'Hoole.
Yes, thank you.
But I think that Man of Steel was probably the biggest like emotional response I had to a Snyder film to this point, and that was a bad emotional response. It was a wow. Like I'm not like a Superman guy. Like especially at that point in time when I was 18 or whatever, when I saw that movie when it came out, and I was like, I feel like this just does not like get to what is interesting or noble or fun to watch about Superman. The end of that movie feels like they murdered thousands of people.
Yes,
and you
they did.
don't know. Like I was like, that feels unintentional. That just feels like they did not care. And then in the next movie, he kind of retcons. Oh, that was like 9/11, but for Bruce Wayne, you know. And it's like, again, he sticks with that idea. I think I appreciate about the guy. But he, I think it was when he made Watchmen, he was interviewed like, oh, like, would you ever do Superman? Would you ever do like Wonder Woman, like those kinds of characters? I know you work for Warner Brothers. They own all those characters. And he said, like, I can't relate to those characters. Like, I don't even know what I would say about those characters. Like the Watchmen characters, these are the guys I relate to. And yeah, when he gets Superman, he sort of treats them like the Watchmen characters for a little bit. Certainly in Batman v Superman, I think he, whether he just like fell into this narrative choice or not, he finds something lucky in treating Superman as an optimistic figure in Zack Snyder's Justice League. But Henry Cavill does not have much screen time. It's much more of a symbol of what bringing back Superman would actually mean.
Yeah.
And for the first time in the 3 movies he's made with Superman, gets to an idea of what is cool about Superman, of what he can symbolize, I suppose. So,
if anything, it's more of a Batman movie. So what do y'all think of Batman? I feel like we got to talk about him.
I did want to talk about this. There's a moment when Batman is asked by Barry Allen, what's your superpower? And Batman says, being rich. But
it's honest.
It's a funny joke, but it kind of sucks to hear Batman say that, Like it's it is self-awareness on the part of the writing that shows a lack of self-awareness on behalf of the character.
I agree.
I think it is.
What do you care about? What does this Batman care about?
Okay, this is a segue, but my first thought when when Cyborg's learning about his powers from his dad's voicemail thing or the recording,
and then it goes into his mind,
and then he's like,
mind palace.
you could do what with the money? Then he gives that one random lady money. My first thought was, bitch, you could take all of Batman's money and give it to everyone. Why are you doing that right now? You could level the playing field.
that way.
That would probably solve more problems than anything you could have done. But he doesn't think of it. He gives his one lady 100,000.
I think Steppenwolf would still obliterate everybody in the timeline you're discussing.
After you save the world, you could tell Batman, I'm gonna just take a cut of your money and I'm gonna help everyone. Anyway.
Yeah. I mean, it's I don't know. I was thinking the other day about there was a cool piece that Manzler Sites wrote about a different franchise, the Monsterverse, like Godzilla versus Kong and all the films before that. And he said something that stuck with me of like, this is the only major franchise that Hollywood makes that is not about either cops or figures that serve a cop-like function.
Yep.
And I thought that was very interesting because at the end of the day, in Marvel and DC, you're creating characters that sort of kind of had to, create a sense of sameness. They can be extraordinary, they can save people, but they're not obliterating the status quo. They wouldn't do that. They want to stop people from doing that. The supervillains, that is. Or the more, quote-unquote, complicated supervillains like Killmonger, who might have ideas that would actually help a lot of people. But the means to which they go about it, those are the bad ones. And thus they must be, they kill people along the way. They must be stopped. But I don't know where I was going with that.
Case in point, in this movie, the whole extended bank robbery sequence. Let me just cite this word for word.
Yeah.
So Wonder Woman asks one of the bank robbers, "Who are you?" And he responds, quote, "We're a small group of reactionary terrorists who want to turn the clock back 1,000 years in Europe." To which Wonder Woman says, "Boring." Which is a pretty great response, I gotta say. But that's such a nebulous, I don't know. She is protecting a bank and then having really like boilerplate basic girl power dialogue with a young girl. That it feels like a very empty tip of the hat towards
women.
A hazy idea of feminism.
Yeah. Yeah.
It doesn't also make sense because this girl cannot be Wonder Woman. Her father is not Zeus or whatever, right? So it's like she cannot save this building from an explosion and then create another explosion in its wake. Right?
Yeah.
Which is such a weird choice.
And it's also something that the first Wonder Woman film sort of avoids.
Yes.
The kind of cheesy girl power crap. Like not that is inherently a bad idea, but where it's like it's just so ridiculous. It's the stuff that you see at the end of Endgame where it's the shot of all the women together.
The women, yeah.
And characters who have never met each other, have no connection to each other. It's meant for the iconography of girl power, but not actually manifested in any meaningful or dramatic way. That scene, that he could have just been a bank robber. I don't think he needed any dialogue there.
Yeah.
But this adds to my point that Zack Snyder is like the true like himbo excellence director. Like he is
100%
King Himbo. And that's just how he sees the world. And
name a director who looks like he goes to the gym more often than Snyder. I will wait.
Yeah, no answer. Oh, let's talk about the 4:3, guys.
Oh, yes.
Let's talk about that Academy ratio or close to Academy ratio.
I liked it.
I really liked it. I think that this is such a visually appealing movie. Even in the non-action scenes, the way that shots are framed, the way the lighting looks, it's so gorgeous and like leaps and bounds like more visually interesting than any Marvel movie. So inventive in the way that it shows their superpowers. I keep on thinking to the first Flash scene where he saves the girl from the car crash and how like the bolts of lightning like keep like showing up just in the frame. There're just so many things where I'm like, you like fully understand how to make this action the most interesting it can be for the screen and for the audience. And that should really, really be applauded because I feel like there's so many opportunities in all the superhero movies to make these action scenes look better and look more fun. And people are just people are not being visually inventive enough with the way that they make superhero movies anymore.
I agree, actually.
What do you guys think? Yeah.
I like the 4:3. I mean, I always love 4:3, and I think it just looks good. So I hope Zack Snyder normalizes this a bit more. I mean, like if you look at the bank robbery scene or whatever, that scene I found visually interesting because of the way that he covered how he gets into that scene. Like once they get into the scene, what does he focus on? He focuses on the briefcase. Like he doesn't focus on the person. And I thought that was a pretty interesting choice, and that gives it a sense of danger despite you not knowing what's going on. And I don't know, I like that kind of choice, and that feels like a choice that feels like somebody constructing a scene, thinking about an interesting way of covering it, like of using the visuals to tell the story rather than just doing standard coverage, which you'll see a lot in Marvel movies.
Yeah,
and I remember that scene looking so much cut so differently in the original cut, like without like any emphasis on the briefcase, and it like really stuck out to me this time around.
It's like a third of the length in the Whedon version, and I think that every scene in this movie is like 15 minutes, and I think that that is the problem some people have with it, and I think that is why some scenes that really kind of hum, like the bank robbery or the keep it moving scene in Themyscira, with one of the mother boxes just feel like their own short films.
Yeah.
With their own narrative agenda that he can fixate on certain objects and tell a very complete story with them, but also at the same time just make coherent action. I think that the way that the Wonder Woman coverage is just depicted in the original cut in that scene is you don't have any fucking idea what she's doing. And here you have, because he slows it down at some points, but also, because it's just better shot and makes sense. There's a lot more pleasure to be had in a sequence like this one.
I think when it gets to like the final sequence, like the final battle, which is when I started dozing off, like it's when it starts to get a little bland, like when there's a lot of things going on. Like I start to not being able to follow what's going on. Whereas when it's smaller with fewer characters, it's easier to see where he is using the visual style to, emphasize certain points. But when there's like a lot going on, it can get a little messy and busy for me.
Eli, what did you think of the visual style?
Fine.
Fine.
I don't know. I don't know. I truly don't think I have much of a take on the visuals. I remember being geographically confused by the resurrection scene. I don't know where the scientists were in relation to all the monument stuff and how the mother box ends up slamming down on a car. This is a very specific thing.
The Star Lab stuff just does not. You just reminded me that those scenes were in the movie, so not as memorable. I do think that Joe Morton's death, though, is that's an A+ scene.
It's great. A good scene, and then afterwards, there's this weird simultaneous grieving that Victor's going through, and plot moving forward through Wonder Woman, Batman, and Aquaman being like, oh shit, his dad just died. That means that the box is heated up and it's going to be here and we can track it. Yeah, sorry, Victor, hang on.
You're right. Yeah.
I found that a little abrasive, though the moment of Silas's death itself is good. This bridges into performances, which I think we should touch on. Joe Morton's incredible. Ray Fisher's great. Those two performances are excellent.
I don't know. I really dislike the cyborg character, so I found Ray Fisher's performance hard to swallow because it was so much. It's hard to sell his "I hate my daddy" thing. Like it's hard to buy into that so easily. I don't know. I didn't really. I feel like that's part of the script.
But he's not there for his college, his football match.
It was confusing.
He's not there. He's not present.
It was too. I think that one veers too much into a very broad melodrama that I can't buy into. I don't know. Maybe that's not performance. Maybe that's more like a story issue. And I already said Flash really annoying.
I think he anchors that stuff that's like in his mind, like the stuff that is so montage based. I remember there's one of the many scenes that explains how the mother boxes work. Ray Fisher is like narrating directly to camera. I think he is a really commanding screen presence, in my opinion.
Agree. Definitely.
And I think the tone of his voice is really interesting. I think a lot of, especially the scene that you described, Eli, like him reacting to his death, even if the script is sort of moving on from it, which is not what you want. Fisher is like, he's not letting that moment go. He has to, like, the way that I remember he moves, however much of that was CGI or otherwise, but just like what's going on in his face there, is just like one of those, considering how much tragedy and death are in all these superhero movies, it's always interesting, like what kind of lingers in your mind. And that moment absolutely does.
And Snyder really supports Fisher's performance there. I think there are a number of moments of performance that Snyder is good at giving space. I think there are some performances that suffer. I'm curious what...
Gal Gadot.
Gadot is kind of... She's really not... I think she's the only character that kind of goes down in this cut versus the Whedon one. Everyone else, dramatic improvement.
Yeah.
No.
It's hard because there's also not really an emotional root for her character in this movie versus like basically everyone else like has a large stake in this, whereas Wonder Woman's just there and like reacting to things. And I don't think I think Gal Gadot tries so hard to act. Like I really think she tries.
But that's kind of
you can see it. You can see it in her
all
face.
The scenes.
Yeah. You could see her trying to act. and good effort, but ultimately I think everyone else was just on like another level. Like at least the Justice League members, they were I think Gal was lagging behind a little bit.
I'm not super compelled by Ben Affleck, and I'm also really, really not compelled by Amber Heard. I found her performance quite disappointing.
Wait, so okay, you guys have not seen James Wan's Aquaman. She does not have an English accent in that movie.
No.
What?
Or in the original Whedon cut of Justice League. I believe that the footage they used was they changed accents midstream.
That's funny.
Wow.
But when she's in Nightmare and she's saying, I want to get close to Superman so I can hurt him for what he did to Arthur, I'm like, ooh. Yikes.
I don't know. I don't know what you're talking about. I threw her the Best Supporting Actress Oscar when I saw that scene. Threw it at my screen.
Oh.
Can I stand for Ben Affleck here?
Yeah.
Yes, you can.
Again, much like Snyder, I think that seeing this movie in a moment where I think culturally we are all kind of rooting for Ben Affleck in many ways. Maybe that's a broad gesture. I think a lot more people are rooting for him, or maybe defending him, or maybe saying like, oh, actually, he was a pretty interesting screen presence, and he does have a himbo energy to him that I do genuinely enjoy as Bruce Wayne. I think that Snyder, across these two movies, it really makes Affleck's work hard.
Yes.
In Batman Superman, especially, where he has to be angry at Superman for various reasons that don't make any sense.
Very confusing.
And then in this movie, he has to pull a 180 and say, like, this guy died by my side, and I must do everything I can to preserve his legacy. At the very least here, by serving ringleader, by serving like, you gotta have faith, Alfred, that whole scene, he gets to tap into the stuff that I really like about Affleck and his performances when he leans towards the positive. His career arc is so interesting to me, of like, he was so often miscast as these brooding figures early in his career. Not his energy. That's not what he's good at. He's much more of like this kind of everyday guy. And then, which also is interesting energy to bring to Bruce Wayne. It kind of reminds me of the Michael Keaton energy in the original Batman movies. Much more heightened world. But like, he kind of feels like a normal guy as Bruce Wayne, as opposed to the playboy energy of a Christian Bale.
Right.
So yeah, I thought that he was successful in this, but yeah, not totally served. They never got to make his movie. That was a mixture of Affleck not wanting to make it and just like the chips aligning where they did with these movies. But yeah, Batman not totally served by the Snyder vision.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Excited to see what Robert Pattinson brings to
Same here.
the role. It's going to be very interesting.
Pattinson is such an interesting choice because he feels like he should be in the rogues gallery of Batman rather than Batman. Like him as a person.
I think he's going to be a crazy Batman.
Yeah.
I want to be concerned about Robert Pattinson's Batman's well-being.
If I had a bat, I would fuck it.
Well, on that note.
Should we wrap it up, friends?
Final thoughts on Zack Snyder's Justice League?
Well, I think we should also talk about how it was sort of like a triumph of the fans, right? Like the studio caved in to everyone demanding the Snyder Cut. However obnoxious and like horrible those people may be online, they like listened to them and gave the fans what they wanted, which is, I think, a first in like at least big budget filmmaking world where like they're able to release a director's cut of this.
I mean, there were so many moving factors of like the fact that we got this 4-hour and 2-minute thing is a testament of, I think, really three things. HBO Max being a service that was at least in its early go, and they needed things that would add a lot of clicks and a lot of articles about it. And then, of course, there's a pandemic. Easier to make a $70 million movie when it's already shot. And then I think there was the factor of Warner Brothers in general looking at like, well, we don't really need to do the Snyder thing anymore. So like, let's just kind of let him do whatever he wants. That will be like our gift to the fans, as Wilson said. Like that'll be our wrapping up the bow.
Mm-hmm.
And Snyder took that in a different direction of like, okay, I will do everything I want. And I'm going to indicate to people about what my whole universe would be and see if there's any interest in that. Because, you know, this was an unlikely story. Maybe there'll be another unlikely story. I don't know if that part is going to work. It certainly leaves the movie on a confusing couple scenes. But yeah, a lot of very weird circumstances to get this exact version of this movie that never would have been in theaters. I can't even imagine what the 3-hour version of this movie is that like could have been in theaters.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Crazy movie. Very weird. I liked it.
Crazy movie, very weird. I'm ambivalent.
I've already stopped thinking about the movie, guys.
And it's still playing on your computer in the background. I like forgot everything. I enjoyed it quite a lot, but I'm a big sucker for superhero movies, and I miss a big superhero movie. So this was it.
I feel like I've reached the point of like massive superhero fatigue, even though I'm kind of excited for the Marvel ones coming out this year. I don't know. I think I'm starting to feel the thing that the critics have been complaining about maybe like 5-10 years ago. I'm finally there and being like,
I think that Marvel has started to dig itself a hole that it's trying to scramble out of, but it will take at least like 3 to 4 years to...
You don't think that 4 Marvel movies and 4 Marvel shows a year is a sign of is going to make people tired? I don't know about that.
I think the 2 WandaVision and Falcon and Winter Soldier feel like bad signs. Like after watching those, like I think
I kind of agree.
They're starting to make mistakes that I think the DC universe was making at the beginning. So I think they're starting to flag a little bit in terms of writing, and they're starting to do the thing which is doing more fan service rather than just trying to tell a compelling story.
They're making objects that have to end at the same place they began. They just sort of they're like these intense, dramatic, emotional stories that just have to revert back to exactly where the chips fell in the first one, because they need to account for the audience that's only seeing the movies.
Mm-hmm.
And we're like, okay, well, Sam has the Cap shield, so he's Captain America, right? And then here's 6 episodes about suddenly Sam doesn't want the shield. And then he decides at the end that, you know, the shield is worth it after all. And he's exactly where he was at the end of Endgame. A different emotional journey, maybe, but narratively it's the same.
There's like an inability to pull big punches plot-wise.
Because there's just so much going on. And I think they have more success. They tend to have more success with the space stuff, which can sort of occupy different corners. I say this and like, obviously, I don't think that Captain Marvel particularly worked as a movie or a character. But I am kind of excited for like Loki and the Eternals. Like they're always going to get me back, right?
Yeah. I will definitely be paying money to see whatever superhero movie comes out next, regardless of the studio.
Regardless of my fatigue, I'm still gonna watch it. It's kind of
like
annoying.
While watching Justice League, I was like, oh damn, this would have looked so good on an IMAX screen.
They're gonna release it in IMAX this fall.
Oh, okay, well, I'm sorry, I'm there.
What's the point of it being in IMAX if it's gonna be 4:3 anyway?
IMAX is already like 4:3. That's IMAX.
So they have he's just sort of pre-retrofitted it for IMAX.
Yeah, pretty sweet.
I might see it.
My god!
I did not see it in one go, but I might go if it's like in IMAX for a week. I might be interested. Depends on what's going on in my life.
Yes.
If it's really sad, I'll go. if I have anything going on, I'll just wish that I went and not go.
Yeah. What is it? Tom Cruise, back to the movies. With the video of him going to see I forgot what was the movie.
Tenet.
Yeah.
Oh, have you guys seen the new one that Vin Diesel did that's very similar?
No, I haven't.
It's half an ad for Fast and Furious 9, and it's half him saying, we all miss the magic of the movies. It's good shit. Highly recommend.
Yes. King shit.
I'll be there. F9 baby, opening night.
Is it crazy that I have never seen a Fast and Furious movie in my life?
It's getting to that point.
I have not seen most of those.
I mean, to. It looks so fun.
It's absolutely the best superhero franchise we have.
Okay, and when you put it like that, there's like, I don't know, there's no reason not for me not to watch it.
I watched the first one yesterday for the first time. They were showing it in a movie theater nearby because I think they're doing, some theaters are doing like, we're going to show each of them every Friday until the new one opens.
Yeah.
First one is just a grounded movie about a bunch of people who like race cars and then they like steal DVDs players or shit like that. And then like halfway through the franchise, they just decide to like veer into full superhero mode. It's something. If you guys have not seen all of them, I'm about to catch up with the ones that I've missed.
That might be my, summer plan this year. We'll see.
I feel like I've only seen Tokyo Drift, and that's the only one I've seen.
It's a good movie.
Okay, should we wrap it up?
Russell, thank you so much for joining us. This was a really fun conversation. Is there anything that you want to direct our listeners to?
I have a Twitter.
Spoken so regretfully.
Yeah. I'm just trying to remember what my username is. I think it's Russell_Golds, Golds. That has a link to my work. You can see it as announcements about what I'm up to, what I've been developing. Fun stuff. Hopefully some of them get made.
Okay. Well, thank you all for listening to this episode of Deep Cut. Please rate and review because that helps us keep making the show. Be sure to subscribe to us where you listen to podcasts so you'll know when our next episode drops. You can give us a follow on Twitter and Instagram at DeepCutPod. Join us to talk about our movies on our Discord server, to which you'll find a link in the description below. Thank you to Justina Yam for our beautiful artwork. I'm Wilson.
I'm Ben.
I'm Eli.
I'm Russell.
Take care, and we're looking forward to talking about more movies with you next time.
All right, everyone, give me your best Kal-El no on 3. 1, 2, 3.
Kal-El no!